Hello and welcome back to Your Heart's Path. My name is Faye. We're doing things a little differently today. Normally you've got my face on the screen, but I'm trying something different as I've been in a little creative whirlwind today. In all honesty, it's 21 minutes past 12 on a Thursday. I was client free today to get some creative bits and pieces done. I haven't even showered. I have been making some content for you, and I'm also in a space where I need to get some things done around home. So I'm a Gemini sun, meaning my communication skills are kind of my forte in some way. And there's a part of that where I actually love to multitask. Some of my greatest ideas come when I'm cleaning the house and doing the washing and mowing the lawns and just these kind of everyday practical pieces. So I thought we could have a bit of a conversation today whilst I first of all clean my kitchen. We'll see how we go with that. I would like to have some conversations around clairvoyance and some other pieces that I initially thought that I'd write down on paper today. So if you're a little bit sensitive to background noises, the odd bark of my dog, the potential of dishes and things crashing and banging, this is probably not going to be for you. If you would like to get something done in your own home or take yourself for a bit of a walk whilst you listen, we're just going to rendezvous around this beautiful topic of clairvoyance that I absolutely love. You know, I'm super passionate about and I really believe provides these most incredible insights into not just the structure of our reality, which then obviously gives us insight into what we need to transform and change in order to make a difference to that which is poking out on the surface in our physical reality. So for manifestation and conscious creation, it's something that really deepens our relationship to life, and it is my personal direct connection to truth. And truth being something that too is forever expanding in nature, and so it comes with this willingness to not interfere and to really be in this space where, you know, we are observing when we're seeing clairvoyantly. And, you know, I think that's a great place to start, because so frequently I get asked this question, and it's often where we begin when I'm teaching clairvoyance in the House of Mystics. And some of these questions around, well, how do I know if it's my imagination or my inner sight? And what people don't realise right away is that, you know, sometimes I think when we start to have visions, they either get shelved into the space of imagination, so they're not giving a sense of importance, or they're kind of looked at like, oh, well, that can't be a vision because it's not a full-blown movie, or I don't know who the characters are in the story, or, you know, it was only just two little scenes or a funny little shape and I don't understand what that is. And I sense that, you know, we've all had periods in this incredible life that we live where the value probably of our imagination has been, one, monetized, two, I would say, without knowing scientifically, but those parts of our brain, whether it be that alpha wave that we access to really stimulate the imagination and explore creative ideas, that perhaps we don't have spaces where that's happening anymore. We've been bound to time being something that, you know, creativity, sort of an imagination is something of a luxury, and I would say it just isn't something that's being prioritised almost in our day-to-day living anymore. And, you know, I think there's a lot of joy that I see in parents once they start having children, where there's this opportunity to play, and there's certainly in the community where I live an emphasised value, which I think is worth celebrating, that the parents are, you know, really making a conscious effort not to raise laptop children and to really get kids outside so that they can learn to use their imaginations for play and creativity. And I think innocently, when we're able to tap into our imagination, it's not something that feels suppressed, or, you know, we re-enter into that space where we go into fictional reality, we could even call it if we wanted to, the brain doesn't really know any different. And the beauty of that is our wonderful imagination. You might recall that, when you were back at school and you got space to write a story about something, and you kind of pulled it out of nothing, and these characters would come and you'd see them in your mind's eye, and perhaps, it was based on things that you'd explored or seen before, and perhaps it was a brand new idea. And it's a very joyful experience, and something that I believe is just perhaps not valued in the same way that it used to be. So it can be looked upon as illusion. And in some sense, when, we're playing with imagination, there are illusionary aspects. And that's something that we learn to be able to perceive when we're working clairvoyantly and when we're working with the third eye. But the imagination is often a beautiful gateway through. And instead of stopping there, if you're asking yourself this question, is that a vision or is this my imagination? Instead of assessing the source of where that's coming from, lean in and let it play out. And that way the questioning starts to change. And what I mean by that is when we're asking a question, I would say that the universe or the spirit or your brain and your soul, it all goes to work to bring the answers back to you based on the questions in which you're asking. And you're not going to get a logical answer from your being in regards to what it is that you're seeing, this non-physical part of our inner being and our intuitive nature and our clairvoyance. It kind of works on a different domain, and the logical mind is something that needs to be almost held at bay or held steady, where we want to understand that, just like our intuition, it's not based on physical evidence or, something that we can see externally in our environment. So there has to be you've got to be prepared to be able to let some of that go. And instead of then just going into the judgment of, well, what is this? And how do I know if it's real or not? What if you got curious and just decided to observe what it is that you're seeing in your visions when you're meditating, when you're just sitting in silence, in stillness, with your eyes closed or your eyes open? This can be, happening. It's much more easeful to be present and practice that position of the observer if we do have the eyes closed, as we're just not distracted by the physical plane. But I would just give you permission right away to sit with it and see what happens inside of your imagination. Give permission for vision to come up into your space. And whilst that seems like a very basic instruction, you might realize right away where you're closing down, blocking, preventing, fearing what it is that you see, even attaching to the vision and beginning to interfere, where we are most certainly going into the imaginative part of our being, where we are creating versus receiving, seeing clairvoyantly. But we start to gain insight. We start to gain insight, awareness, and wisdom into our relationship with vision. And this is a really important key, because we want to understand right from the get-go that if we're not seeing clearly, psychically, the fullness of our reality, then we have space to grow. There is room to be able to see more. And those veils that protect the truth of our reality come with a great responsibility. And that's the part where I think people start to question, well, okay, maybe I am having visions. Maybe I am having visions sometimes, but why does that matter? What am I going to do with all of that information? If I am to see the truth of what's going on behind my back with X, Y, Z, I don't feel like I have the courage to take action or do anything about it. So like all areas of our life, they're interconnected. And that's a little bit of noise here for a moment. That's part of why I love clairvoyance as a tool for exploring consciousness and as a gateway into the truth of our reality, because it will show you the interconnected nature of all things, right from something as basic as your imagination. You will start to unravel the patterns that create the structure of how you perceive life and this reality. And that can be something that is pretty overwhelming in the beginning if we don't have the tools to be able to digest our experiences, I think share our visions. I feel to be able to I want to say take time out of the equation, meaning some visions are gifted to you and you can meditate and observe the same simple little shack up on the top of the mountain on a rainy day for days until you finally grasp the nature of what this one pocket of information is revealing to you. But that doesn't mean that we're just looking for the final outcome all the time. And it really brings about this beautiful, what I would say like a journey. Like there's a journey of exploration that can take place. And one scene at a time, one question at a time, one image at a time, we see what it is that we are ready to see. And there is nothing more humbling than observing our reaction to the truth of reality, to the questions we ask ourselves in this space, to the fears that arise when we think we might be getting it wrong. You know, there's details that come through when we set up, and we do this when we're training, we set up very particular states of being to access that information. And so, you know, a lot of you know my story. I'd say my vision space had periodically been open throughout my life, but after drug use and all sorts of other things, there's a certain amount of closure, illusion, veils of fear, other sorts of interferences, which we don't need to talk about today, but right down to things like extraterrestrial implants and stuff that come into our vehicle or our matrix that can have effects on the way that we perceive the truth. All these little pieces come with this invitation to cleanse and purify the body and the being. And we don't just open our third eye and have the answers, you know, to reality. We're learning about ourselves and who we are, and you know, we're looking in the beginning at a lot of what blocks our sight, a lot of what blocks our truth. And the veil for me was lifted very quickly in this experience of, you know, mania. And I was put in the psych ward, and you know, I spent upwards of 12 weeks in there, I believe. A long time, until, you know, kind of dancing between this space of imagination and vision and what's real and what's not real, and with an awareness that there was a vibrational aspect to this experience that had an effect on what it was that I could perceive. So kind of blinded when I was in fear, and opened when I was in a space of love and peace, and you know, connected to my power or my light, and supported or allowing the support of the beings that were there and around me to help and support me. But I think we know deep down, deep down in our bodies that once we see, we can't really unsee. It either then becomes a truth that we choose to bury, and often we need external substances in order to mask that. So we start drinking or smoking, or what I've even seen, I don't want to bring that in today, I was going to say even in the allure of the plant medicine, and you know, feeling like you need something external in order to awaken to these truths. Even though you are a body of nature and have this capacity internally to reach these states of being, really, vibrationally and receive the answers that you are ready to receive. But the blocking or the pushing down is kind of like a self-protection. It's self-preservation. And I understand it, I really do. Because as we said, once you see, you can't unsee. And it changes reality. It changes your relationships, what you want to do for work. It changes what's important here and what's not important anymore. You get into a space where I think it breeds more compassion. And what I mean by that is not only do you see and start to experience more of the truth of your own reality, you begin to perceive other people in that way. So there's a humbling that takes place where if you've lived a life of blame or, you've felt stuck in a particular experience, or you felt like, you were taken advantage of, the eye starts to show us the structure of reality and the purpose of our experiences, even if it is through suffering, that there is reason for everything. And coming right back around to that piece that I only touched on briefly, but with the responsibility. And the responsibility, once you see, to then choose not to look at the truth is really painful. And I see people in this experience a lot because they haven't had the tools, they haven't had the support, they haven't had the practices or the understanding from anybody in their physical reality that allows them with confidence to ground these truths into their experience with the honor, the sensitivity, the courage, bravery, beauty that we know on a really deep level our visions deserve. And no one says it better than Josh Shree from the Emerald podcast. If you haven't listened to For the Intuitives Part 1 and Part 2, it's a conversation that every sensitive, intuitive, mystical being on this planet at this time could benefit from listening to. And this responsibility piece, once we know that this is real, it's true, it's possible to explore more, the pain of not doing something about it or not having access to or not having people to share this with, the pain of that becomes far greater than the pain of seeing the truth itself. And so a lot of you listening, you're courageous, you're exploring your inner being, and we enter into this awakening through our soul contracts, through purpose. You've earned the right to awaken and fulfill the plan that, you kind of created before you got here. And even that, for someone who isn't ready to take responsibility for their life or to look at the aspects where, you've gone through great suffering or hurt or, it seems like it could be approached as a bypass, but it's not that at all. And where we see the greatest of movement and transformation, not stuckness or stillness or powerlessness, where we really do start to see the true nature of our power, and especially clairvoyantly, is when we start to be able to transform those experiences. And for some of you, I've seen this before. I've seen people pass from sickness, illness, disease, yet they have fulfilled their soul's contracts and they've asked the question that provides the insights, the guidance, the movement, the truth, by asking, what is this teaching me? What is this revealing to me? How can I grow? How can I evolve? How can I return, to love through this experience? And a perspective that can come through in a vision can hold so much information, because we're going beyond time. We're going beyond, I don't want to say space, but we're going beyond the physical plane, where in a simple flash or a simple image, just like a powerful dream, aspects of your life that you've been logically trying to understand for decades or years or lifetimes can all integrate or make sense in the space of a moment. And sometimes that's that breath of ecstasy, or that, that connection to the divine where everything makes sense. And we rise above the dualistic nature of our three-dimensional reality, and we don't see things anymore as good or bad or black or white. In that moment where we're connected to that oneness, we see the perfection of things. And I laugh about this with my students, because some of them learn to access these states of, source or God or divinity, ecstasy, bliss, love, and we work to get to those states of being. And what happens often, they can come in with all of these questions for their intuition and for source and about life, and they arrive in that space and all those questions just disappear, because, and I've had this experience myself, where it all just makes sense. It just is about the answer for everything when we're in that vibration. And I just think it's absolutely beautiful. But vision is just, it's one small segment of our clairs, our psychic abilities. But for me, it's the one that offers the opportunity to reveal a level of truth that isn't limited by the other senses, but certainly will reveal these certain structures of reality that, if they don't have a sound, most things do have a sound to some degree, but a sound that we can understand or perceive. If they don't have visual, we can be sensing quite blindly some of these more complicated realities. And vision uses our own, how do I say this? It uses our own definitions to help communicate. So I would always say to the students, so and it speaks symbolically through these meanings. So an apple to you might trigger a memory of when you were a child and you watched Snow White. Is that right? She has the poisonous apple. She bites the poisonous apple. So perhaps an apple for you is something to be cautious of. So you see an apple visually, and spirit knows this because it's all vibrational. Spirit, or whomever it is you're communicating with, that's sharing your clairvoyant visions, even if it's your higher self. We'll talk about the source another time. But if you have an understanding or a relationship with an apple that triggers a vibrational response in your body and being, or there is a clear understanding of what that symbolically means, so say for you it's caution or whatever that is, to me it might remind me more of Tasmania from the space in which I live in. So I might look at that and feel a sense of home when I'm reading symbolically the visual that comes simply from an apple. Now, I don't want to latch on to that experience. There's one way in which symbology or pictures and images will use our own memory or stored data within our being to communicate a simple message, such as be cautious or this is home. But I don't want to necessarily apply that meaning all the time, because then the apple becomes fixed. If the apple becomes fixed, it's kind of challenging then if my spirit team want to show me a message about home versus just taking my awareness to home, and they're showing me the apple and they're showing me, parts of Tasmania. There might be a message about home in there. So instead of just stopping there and going, I don't understand what the apple means, I can engage with that vision. I can have a conversation with that vision. I might get confirmation and say, is that about home? And I might get a strong yes. And I might ask a question, what is it I need to know? From that space, the apple might disappear and a completely different symbol might appear. But if the apple wants to continue to speak the story, which it can, and sometimes the most simple of visions are the most powerful, it might split open and a little worm might crawl out. Now, the moment a little worm crawls out, I'm feeling into the experience of that energy. Now, worms are a beautiful thing. They're underground, aren't they? So I might look at that and kind of go, symbolically, there's a little worm here, it's in the apple, so it's ripe. There is some composting going on, but perhaps there's an experience here where I need to have a look at the finer details. I need to look inside of something a little closer. So I might ask a different question. And what starts to happen with the apple, or maybe I follow the worm and it takes me underneath the ground, and I'm having a look underneath the ground. I'm going, okay, what is going on with the structure of home here? And I might see something changing, and I might see then a picture that appears that shows me a vision of moving out of the house in which I'm currently in. Now, it's strange to think that all of that can come from a simple apple, but what we often do as someone who hasn't been given the space to explore their clairvoyance and has left it up to imagination, you might be meditating and seeing an apple, and instead of going, oh, there's my imagination again, well, what is that? We get quiet, go into observation, and we continue to watch the apple whilst feeling into what that symbolically means to you. And from that lovely present state that you've created where you're in that place of awareness, you can ask that apple a question. And instead of interfering or creating the next scene or the answer to your question with your imagination, you're sitting back. And in sitting back, you're letting it transform and change in front of you. And now you know the difference between something that you are making in your mind and something that is arriving. And this is a very different experience of creating or receiving. And where clairvoyance often will start with something nice and simple, nice and symbolic, or something that you've seen over and over again in your life and in your reality, because it's a piece of information that wants to be integrated by being understood under the light of your awareness. And that's a really important thing. When you're observing something, you're bringing light to it. It's where we focus, where we give attention, and where we give the opportunity for this intelligent information to be able to communicate. And if we met somebody that spoke a completely different language to us, and we have a couple of different ways in which we can communicate. We can wave, we're looking at body language, we might feel into tone, there's different kind of things that come in here, and there is a certain point at where we're limited in our communication, and we have an opportunity as to whether we want to learn the language or whether we want to let go of it completely. And if we let go of it, we just don't really have a relationship with it. But if we don't have a relationship, we don't have the experiences that come with those beautiful connections and the possibilities of expansion that really takes place. And there really are layers when it comes to clairvoyance, and the simple stuff is good. Mine started very loud, very fast, very full on, from seeing all sorts of different beings that looked familiar, earthly looking beings, to very dark, scary stuff, to wormholes and implants and pictures of the future that would come true within hours or within days, almost as these opportunity for confirmation, because I was just in such disbelief and unable to process the sheer amount of information, light, that had been revealed to me in such a short period of time, which is why I hit mania and got lost in my psyche, because I wasn't grounded any longer in my reality, which went that me, not Faye the physical body or being, Faye and her soul and my essence was overwhelmed with the truth of our vibrational reality, of what was behind the physical. And we have to be prepared to see that. So it's a pretty cool thing, and to come into a space where you get to learn with other people and ask the questions and go through a series of pictures or images that to you might not make any sense, but you share them with somebody else who's asked you a question, and they can receive a completely life-changing piece of information that has depth, that has a changing effect on our reality, because we're not just addressing the physical. And this is what I love about readings, about guidance. It allows for us to go to the core, and that's what we're looking at. We're looking at what's behind the physical reality. And this non-physical reality that's all around us is far more closely connected to the truth, or paves a path to the truth, that we all have access to. But we have to work. And I've lost students. I lost a student partway through a course because she got to a point where I think she was at her capacity, and she realised that I wasn't just going to wave a magic wand for her, and she didn't want to do the work. And that's a choice that we make. We all come up against these challenges. We all come up against these obstacles or opportunities that you'll see are pretty cyclical in nature, whether it's every year the same opportunity comes around, or you have the same vision or the same lot of experiences, just different characters, and you go, fuck, am I ready to do this now? And truth be told, we're never really going to be ready. I didn't get given a choice. It was do or die for me, quite literally. And I knew that, and I resented that for a long time, but I couldn't switch it off. And so I had to learn how to heal myself, clear myself, accept the truth, but also develop tools to be able to process, digest, understand, relate with the beauty of clairvoyance. And it's such an awesome opportunity to develop discernment. And, you know, I really feel like we've gone lots of different places today as I'm cleaning my kitchen and talking away. But some of the things that I love about clairvoyance is not just our ability to be able to tune in to what's behind the physical reality, or what's creating the physical reality, by being able to get to the root cause of our experiences, or by looking at it through the lens of the soul, where we're asking, what's this teaching me? Where we allow movement, where we allow transformation, where we allow change. It's something that helps connection and deepen our relationship to life. It can give us insights into relational energy, so not just singular, where I guess the nature of predictive sight is valuable in our own lives. I think we need to be very cautious if we're reading for other people's futures. It's not really what we do anymore as psychics. It's a conversation for another day. But when we're looking at relational energy, we're asking questions where we bring two pockets of information. And you might, as I'm sort of talking, imagine these as like, I don't know, two spheres or two balls. Circles are great. I work with circles all the time. So see two circles, and in one circle is you, and in the other circle is your partner, whether that's your current partner, your potential future partner, or it's just the intention of the relationship that you would love to be in, or that's for your highest good, whatever it is. So you basically got two people. You don't even need to personalize these if you don't want to. You use your imagination. We'll get to this a little later. We utilize our imagination to create structures for our intuition to speak. So we can ignite our imagination to create structures for the fluidity of our intuition and our inner sight to speak. And this is one way that we work with sight in the House of Mystics. So you create the two circles in your imagination, you place you and somebody else in the other circle, and then you actually ask the question. And that might be, what happens, what's the result of this relationship long term? And you might bring those two pockets of information together, and what you start to notice is as they merge together, you might just see it from that eye-like shape in the center, or you actually overlap them completely. You have a scene that starts to unfold, and that might be a picture, it could be a color, you could just be looking at texture, you might be looking at metaphor, you might be looking at something very literal, you might see some words. There are many different ways in which clairvoyance speaks. And we get to see how two pieces or two pockets of information work together to produce a truth of relational energy. So it's less about what am I going to do in my life. We might say, how can I be of service to humanity? And then we have we have ourselves, we have our skill set, we have our passions, our soul, our purpose, our contracts, and then we have the rest of the world. And now what we're doing when we're working with our purpose work is responding to the needs, aren't we, of humanity or the animals or the earth or the planet or wherever it is that we're at. So it is a relational energy. There's transformation and change that takes place when we interact with life itself. So relational energy is a beautiful and often unspoken byproduct of clairvoyance, and also how we work with this quite personally. So not just categories of life, but we can look at the result of particular pieces that get introduced to our life or taken away to see the outcome of situations, or to ask what method or tool do I bring in to transform this energy, this current experience. We can see what's on the surface and we can ask what's beneath. So we start to look at interconnecting pockets of energy that create a bigger picture for us to be able to perceive a greater truth that can reveal almost like a holistic experience for the full body to see. And clairvoyance can come with audience, meaning there can be sounds to your pictures, movies, images. It can come with a knowing, meaning I don't know why I know, but I just know that this is true, or this is the outcome, or this is what I have to do, or this is the risk I have to take. And then we have our sentience, our feeling, our heart, our sensing body and being. And they do really work together, but I just find the joy, creativity, and depth that comes from clairvoyance is why I prioritise developing skill sets around reaching this part within our body and our being, just below the crown chakra there, behind, the forehead, right in the centre of the head there, as I believe it has the greatest opportunity for self-mastery. Just taking a breath. My kitchen's almost clean. I've been using a spray made of vinegar, peppermint and water, as we've been more mindful with the toxins in our home and in our house, and knew this for a long time. It's funny, isn't it, that there can be a timing to things, or a readiness, or just a following through. I'm not spraying the house with shit, I'm just choosing to do something a little different with a long-term side effect, so I'm sure also just smells better. The dogs like it more. So coming back to clairvoyance and the other things that I love, it's not just the relational energy, the opportunity to again reignite the imagination as a means of co-creation when we come to seeing or experiencing sight. And so we have lots of different methods that we use in my own training schools, where we bring in backdrops, canvases, something that sets the scene, that allows for us to hold our mind steady in the light, so as that these visions can come through. And the higher self is the one that observes, and we need to get really good at this. And I feel clairvoyance is one of those things where we lose our pictures and images, because very quickly, if our mind is not in a state of purity, so it also enhances this word again, responsibility, that comes in when it comes to the training of the mind, and being able to create space inside of the mind and distance between us and the mind, and a strong recognition that we're not our thoughts, so that we can sit back and observe them, no matter how beautiful, how rapid and rampant, how uncomfortable, how joyful, that we can be in a state of being where that can be happening, or come into complete stillness eventually, which is very handy, that when that space opens up, that we have that distance, and we need that distance in order to get on a really beautiful roll clairvoyantly and move from one scene in a picture or an image to scenes that then continue to unfold into, sort of more full-blown movies and multiple different categories and pockets of information that stream in all at one time and, and end up sort of coming into a space, I guess, where we're channeling. So the mind, just like the emotional body and being, and this emphasis on a holistic package of information is where I've sensed like the biggest transformation, because if it's only bouncing around in the mind, and you might even look at that space around the vision, it's just a picture, it's just an idea, it's just a something until it has substance. And so it needs to move through down into our body and our being. It needs to touch our hearts for it to be felt. It needs to move, through the throat in order to be heard. It needs to, kind of land in a way that, even through our crown with our knowing and everything, it has a holistic pocket of information. If we can perceive that fully, because we have created enough distance between our own mind and our own emotional body to create room for the fullness of the message to land in our system and perceive it, not just with our eye, but with the fullness of our sensing experience. Sometimes you're in a space then where that information literally just changes the structure of your reality, because you've allowed in a new truth. And we make space for that. We make space for that by doing the healing, by making room, by not running away, by not fearing what it is that we see or we perceive, and, being in a space of not holding on to those visions either, so that they can continue to unfold, continue to reveal these truths behind our existence, behind our experience. And it's just so fascinating to me. So I love the relational energy that comes with clairvoyance. I love the application of imagination, where we start to give permission to ourselves to ignite that part of our being with an intention to communicate and receive the truth more readily, which has a byproduct, I think, helps us not get overwhelmed by the responsibility when we recognize we are the creators of our reality. So we get the drawing board through the imagination space by receiving images from a higher plane of what our life is to look like based on what we chose before we even arrived here, but also with the recognition that it's a co-creation. And that's something that my students sometimes, sorry, I'm puffing now, I'm on the move. My students sometimes, I see them kind of blink twice, as they might have perceived prior to that, everything the higher self says or source says or God says or the deities say or the spirit guides say is the ultimate truth. And I actually like to look at this more as a co-creation. And I feel when we're in a co-creative energy, that's where the imagination is really beautiful. And there are amples of opportunities where you, as a unique essence and a unique soul, gets to make a decision about something with completely in the complete unknown, meaning our vision space can help guide us to a place where we're helping and contributing to the co-creation of our reality, but there are still these opportunities where you're making risks or making decisions or creating part of your life with no perception of the future, but with a knowing or a vision or a colour or a texture or a symbol that represents at its truth the reality of your highest good per se, because you've used your intention and whatnot. And so I kind of sense that whilst it deepens our relationship to life, clairvoyance does, gives us this opportunity to take responsibility for the quality of our mind and the way of the movement of our life. So I'm going to say our emotional nature, taking responsibility for our traumas and for the pain, both present, past, karmically, ancestrally, that we do this without blame. We do this with the acceptance that everything is perfect as it is, and there is always an opportunity for movement, not necessarily permanent transformation and change. Some people are here to experience a sickness and die before they get to the end of that. physically, right? But they might get to the other side with all the lessons and learnings because they were present to their experience. That means that, maybe next time they incarnate, it's not a part of their reality. It doesn't mean we don't try to lean towards healthy, right? And our intention wants to be pure, but the outcome is not always up to us. And so when we're looking at manifestation, we're looking at imagination, we're looking at, like I said before, receiving images from a higher plane of existence that, is here to help support us in living out the contracts that we're here to live out. It's something that, hold on a second, I've just lost my train of thought. Come back into my heart, please. Moving from one room to another. Let's just take a breath. I think it's just, I was saying like the acceptance of the full truth, creating the fullness of the reality based upon this wonderful co-creation whilst utilising your imagination for the fruition or the fulfilment of your soul's contracts. Maybe we'll just stop there. Leaning into what else is important when it comes to clairvoyance or the benefits that it adds to our lives. We're looking at the relational, we're looking at the imagination side of things, manifestation. That's where we're going. Thank you. So manifestation, I feel like my own introduction to manifestation came from a space of ego. I'm going to say that I was creating my reality based on fear, based on limitation, based on what I thought I should be making, creating, should be living, what I thought I needed in order to feel full versus feeling full first and then creating from that space. I think it's a sickness. I'm going to go that far in our spiritual circles, in our communities. I think it's been romanticized, that worth has been tied up in materialism, again, the physical world, and the purity of our own creations, our own intentions, and our own manifestations has felt weak. And I think that that's something that as a collective we're bringing more attention to. And we can do that and have our manifestations, our creations contributing to the betterment of humanity and planet Earth and all who reside here and throughout the universe and the galaxies, that we're making decisions, creating things here on this earth with that full responsibility, with the intention being a part of the ingredients that it's for the betterment of all. It's not about serving the I. And what you'll find is if you've spent all your time and all your energy creating something just to feel better about your situation, or so that you can hold on to this amazing new car that you manifested because that's what gives you a sense of power, the universe is going to take it away from you in some way, shape or form. Even if that means how it's taken away from you is not physically, but the fleeting emotional state that you gather from experiencing this physically will disappear. And so that doesn't mean that all creations of wealth are negative, no way. I love beauty. I'm a Taurus rising. I like nice things. I still live in a very small little shacky place with lots of secondhand furniture and, it's nothing glamorous. It is absolutely nothing glamorous. But I'm comfortable here. It's simple. I like to keep things tidy, as you can see. And I'm grateful for this reality. Is that going to stop me from making changes to the environment? No. Not necessarily, but I need to be able to accept the truth of my reality before layering other pieces on top of it and making sure that if I am consciously creating or co-creating changes in my experience, that I'm doing so from a state of love, that I'm doing so from a state of oneness, that not only has my best interest at heart, but the best interest of the lives of other people too. And clairvoyance being something that allows for us to connect to the deeper layers of truth by seeing the truth of our experience of reality, of what is needed at this time. We can then create from a space where the questioning is different, meaning that we can offer a service where there is a need. And I think for me personally, that's where the greatest beauty comes from. And sharing visions is another thing, and why I also, in a space like the House of Mystics, clairvoyance is something that can connect us intimately and deeply in a way that our mental and emotional and even our physical body and beings just cannot even comprehend. To share a vision with somebody, to receive a vision from somebody that they have had for you, do you know how amazing that is? Like, it's enough to make me cry. And I see this with my students when they get to that space where we're stringing together the knowledge, the wisdom and the practices that they've learned, and the courage, applying the courage that it takes to go beyond their own fears and transform those into courage, because that's what it takes to lean in. And they do a reading for one of the other, people in the group, and the accuracy is something that has the other person burst into tears and also affirm the magic of their own reality. Like, there is nothing more profound to me than that. So, yeah. The other part is that it lets us see what doesn't even exist in our physical reality. So there's lots of things that I don't speak about on my social media accounts for reasons such as privacy, and also because some pieces of information need to only be shared with those who are, one, ready to receive the information, to have something like that even land in your reality, because sometimes we are given information too early and it can be catastrophic, which is where we get skilled at what information we are bringing through, who we are bringing in the information from, and why. What is the person's intention as to what, the information. And same when we are in communication with God or spirit or our guides or, higher self or whatever, or when the higher self is in communication. This is all, super important. But there is layers, there is worlds, there is beings, there is technologies, there is plant life, elementals, mystical, magical forms of life, spirit that do not have a physical structure, that live in the non-physical world. So it opens up your connection and communication to life, lives, spirits, and different life forms, technologies that we can interconnect with from, our awareness and again, change our reality. And the beauty of that is some of these, say like technology for an example, in some of these outer galaxies that we can access simply by intention, because our eye can be in multiple different places all at one time, our inner eye. Maybe a conversation for another day, but take it as it is, or let it go, whatever that is. We can access and see different types of technologies in other places that can then have an effect on our, say, etheric body, which then has an effect on our physical body and our health and our well-being. You do see that sometimes with sickness, illness and disease, that there can be like an implant kind of contraption, and none of it's negative. And that's where we need to be mindful, and I even need to be mindful bringing up these sort of things in conversation, is because all of that is just information, and our readiness and our purpose to see the truth, feel the truth, know the truth, all comes, it's all very personal. And again, we have these cycles that present themselves where you have an opportunity to learn, grow, make change, transform, and opportunities where, it's just not in this lifetime. We don't... Neither of it's good or bad or wrong or right. I used to try and force... I will say that I did, because I wanted to share what I knew with other people, but my truth isn't the truth for everybody. Not everyone's ready to perceive the world in the same way that I do. I just think that there's a timing to all of this, and we have to trust that big part of it as well. I think that might be about all that I want to touch on today. I'm at that space where I'm ready to vacuum my little shack here in Tasmania. I'm just going to feel into my heart and just come into a space of stillness. of course. So the only other part that I'd like to add to that is kind of just like a nice little refreshing piece in regards to connecting with other beings or even other galaxies, or, it's light is information, and when we're connecting with light, whether that being beings, spirits, elementals, worlds, cosmos, planets, we can talk to it all. There is information that comes from light that I believe is being grounded into our experience at this time, and vision is one way of receiving that. And the visions that you receive ought to be treated with the same amount of respect you give to your friends, to your lovers, to your body, to your home, to the land in which you live on. And it's a gift. And when a vision is coming from a higher plane or a higher dimension, it's medicine. It's here to be of service. They want to be shared. They want to be understood. They want to be integrated. They want to be moved into our lives and actioned in ways that bring about, the inspiration of innovation that creates the change and the awakening here that's happening at this time. So, I sense the severity, the need, the excitement, the vulnerability, the creativity that comes from psychic awareness from all of our senses, but so specifically with clairvoyance, it's just my number one love. It has given me personally this passion to explore life, to remain as a student, to see the evolution of something that can continue to expand and reveal greater levels of truth at a moment where a completion has taken place. And for me, it's been the bridge that has interconnected me to beings from out of this planet, from on this planet, that have allowed me to teach, to learn. They show me things and teach me things that I try on and play around with in my own life, that I then have the luxury to be able to share with you if you do come into one of my more sacred containers. And we explore this as an open book in your readiness and in your devotion and in the energetic exchange that happens when you financially commit and commit your time and commit your attention and your awareness to one of the most beautiful, deep and evolving aspects of what I believe life here on earth, and just how beautifully it can, yes, open up things and make them seem initially far more vast. It opens up a depth, and that depth has taught me to love you like I love me, to walk this life vibrationally, to take responsibility, but to look at it through the lens of a student, that we're here at this incredible school and we have this opportunity to contribute and learn and grow whilst having this amazing relationship to this wonderful physical body where we get to smell, make love, eat beautiful food, listen to the birds, walk our dogs, paint and create, share wisdom, knowledge, vision, and create the life that we chose to create before we got here, and not as victims, not regardless of our circumstances. I truly believe that we always, always, always have an opportunity or space to connect back to heart. And even if you don't have your third eye right open, you do have an intuition, and that's your bodily wisdom, and that is a beautiful place to start. Start with the sensing body of your heart down, and it will guide you, it will show you. But I'm here if you want to play with clairvoyance more. The House of Mystics Homeschool for the Intuitively Sensitive. There is a wait list. I'm anticipating the opening of that around October, unless the wait list of 2026, unless the wait list opens up sooner. If you're listening to this in the future, come back to my website and see whatever else it is that's going on there. Maybe there's pre-recorded classes and things in another time. But my name is Faye from Your Heart's Path. It's an absolute pleasure just to have this conversation with you today. Thanks for putting up with the clanging and banging as I clean my home. And I hope that this has sparked some form of inner inspiration, perhaps a knowing, an excitement, and just a little pocket of awareness that contributes something positive to your life, and I hope that has a wonderful ripple effect. So again, thanks for being with me here today, and we'll talk again soon.